Ladies and gentlemen, there are moments in life where you're not arguing with a person, you're arguing with a spirit. And the longer you keep talking, the more power you give it. Not every raised voice deserves your answer. Not every face is who it claims to be. Some people are merely vessels, carriers of confusion, of deception, of darkness. But here's the truth. If the enemy can't defeat you, he'll send someone to distract you. Your time, your peace, your energy. He wants it wasted. So let me ask you, have you been defending yourself in conversations you had no business entering? Have you been casting your pearls before swine, hoping they'd appreciate them? It's time you learn. Silence is holy. Discernment is divine. Peace is a weapon. You were not created to wrestle with shadows pretending to be people. When you carry light, darkness will come dressed in familiar clothes, in friends, in family, in authority figures, in the charming and the convincing. But here's your weapon, discernment. Discernment doesn't yowl, it sees. It knows when to step back. It knows when to refuse to engage. Jesus himself said nothing when spirits tried to trap him through people. He knew the difference between a person seeking truth and a vessel seeking war. Stop arguing with someone who's already given their tongue over to destruction. You are not called to convince. You are called to carry peace. And when you keep your peace in a storm stirred by demons, you defeat them by refusing to be moved. There is a deep spiritual truth that many fail to see. Not every person who confronts you is truly who they appear to be. Sometimes what looks like an ordinary disagreement, an emotional outburst, or a heated conversation is something far deeper, more sinister, and more dangerous. It is a spiritual battle disguised as human interaction. The great mistake that many people make is engaging in debates and arguments without first asking the Spirit, is this a conversation or is this a trap? When you don't take a moment to discern the true source of the conflict, you can find yourself locked in a battle that doesn't require your words. It requires your silence and spiritual authority. In your journey through life, you will encounter people who are not driven by logic, love, or even truth. They are driven by chaos. Their aim is not understanding, but agitation. Their mission is not resolution, but to provoke, confuse, and pull you out of your position of peace. These people are not always aware that they're being used, but the spirit behind them knows exactly what it's doing. And if you, unaware, engage them, as if it's just another person with another opinion, you will fall for the oldest trick in the spiritual playbook, fighting shadows instead of standing in the light. You must come to understand that discernment is your greatest weapon. It is the spiritual ability to see beyond the surface, to know the difference between what is real and what is sent. Every argument is not just a disagreement. It could be an assignment from the enemy. The goal is to distract you, pull you down, wear you out, and break your focus. When someone confronts you with bitterness, false accusations, or manipulative language, and you feel your spirit begin to tighten, your heart rate rise, your peace slipping, stop. Take a breath. Ask yourself, is this worth my spirit? Because sometimes you're not talking to the person. You're talking to a spirit that is using that person to get to you. The danger of engaging in arguments with such spirits is that the more you speak, the more you lose. You might think you're defending yourself, standing your ground, proving your point, but in reality, you're giving access You're lowering yourself to fight in a realm you were never meant to fight in. You're stepping out of the covering of wisdom and into the chaos of noise. And the enemy loves noise because he can't survive in peace. This is why spiritual maturity teaches silence more than speaking. A mature spirit doesn't need to always explain itself. It doesn't chase down every rumor. It doesn't fight every battle. It chooses peace, not because it is weak, but because it is wise. The strongest people are those who know when to say nothing. They are led by the Spirit, not by emotion. They see beyond the natural. They know when they are being baited, and they refuse to take the bait. There's a story in Scripture where Jesus stood silent before his accusers. They hurled false charges at him. They twisted his words. They tried to provoke him. And yet, he said nothing. Why? Because he knew he wasn't arguing with men. He was standing in the midst of a spiritual war. His silence wasn't weakness. It was the sound of divine strength. He understood that sometimes to speak is to step out of alignment. Sometimes your defense is to say nothing, to trust God with your reputation, your peace, and your battle. You have to know when your silence speaks louder than your defense. You have to know when your stillness is your stand. Not everyone needs to be answered. Not every message deserves a reply. Not every rumor deserves your reaction. When you respond, you feed the fire. When you remain still, you stand in the authority of the Spirit. Your all-calling is too high to argue with demons who wear human skin. Your purpose is too great to get stuck in pointless debates. Your peace is too precious to give away for free. And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself exhausted, not because of work, but because of battles you weren't supposed to fight in the first place. Arguments sap your energy. Emotional warfare drains your strength, and spiritual warfare fought in the flesh always ends in defeat. This is why discernment must guide your life. You must learn to ask the hard questions in quiet moments. Is this conversation sent to elevate me or to trap me? Is this person speaking from pain, pride, or a dark influence? Will this dialogue help or hinder my spirit? The moment you sense that the answer is wrong, walk away. Protect your peace like a soldier guards a treasure, because once it's gone, everything else falls out of a line. You do not need to prove yourself to everyone. You do not need to win every argument. You are not required to explain your every move. If someone is truly for you, they will not attack you with words laced in spiritual poison. And if someone is being used against you, your fight is not with them. It's with the spirit they've allowed in. So today, make a new decision. I will not argue with what I've been called to overcome. I will not debate with demons disguised as people. I will walk in peace, speak only when the Spirit leads me, and stay grounded in the truth that not every conflict deserves my attention. Discernment over debate. Always, one of the most important spiritual lessons a person can learn is this. Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend, and not everyone who speaks kindly has a pure heart. In fact, the most dangerous attacks against your purpose, your peace, and your calling often come through people who look trustworthy, sound intelligent, and appear spiritual. But behind that pleasant tone or that religious language, there may be something else entirely, an unseen influence working through them, an agenda that is not of God. This is why spiritual discernment is more vital than human observation. You cannot afford to trust only what your eyes see or what your ears hear. You must ask for the wisdom to recognize the spirit behind the mask. It's easy to detect evil when it shows up in obvious forms: anger, abuse, or destruction. But deception, manipulation, and misdirection are far more subtle. They often come in beautiful packages. The enemy doesn't always shout. Sometimes he whispers through people who look like light but carry shadows in their souls. And this is what makes it so difficult. When someone shows up in your life full of charisma, charm, and even scripture, it's easy to let your guard down. You begin to believe their words, admire their persona, and embrace their opinions. But what you don't see immediately is the invisible thread of darkness they may be carrying, the subtle spirit that twists truth, blurs boundaries, and undermines your spiritual confidence. This is not to promote paranoia, but to sharpen your awareness. The battle we face is not always flesh and blood. It is spiritual, and it often comes disguised in human interaction. A smile can be a cover. A compliment can be bait. A handshake can come with hidden motives. And if you don't ask for spiritual insight, you may find yourself caught in the web of someone else's assignment. A person sent not to bless you, but to drain you. There are people who will come into your life to delay your progress, to distract you from your calling, and to divide your peace. And the most unsettling part is that they don't always know they're being used. They might believe they are helping you. They may truly think they are speaking truth, but the spirit operating behind them can be one of confusion, jealousy, or manipulation. And if you do not recognize it, you will spend days, months, even years entangled in relationships that are spiritually toxic. Spiritual maturity is not just about praying louder or quoting more verses. It's about seeing deeper. It's about knowing when something doesn't feel right, even if everything looks right. It's about listening to that still small voice that warns you when someone's presence begins to disturb your peace. That voice is not to be ignored. It is not your imagination. It is discernment trying to protect you from hidden danger. And if you override it, you may find yourself in covenant with chaos. It is possible for someone to speak like a prophet but move like a serpent. It is possible for someone to serve in the temple but carry a heart full of rebellion. That is why Scripture tells us to test every spirit, not every person, but the spirit behind the person. Because spirits don't come knocking at your door as demons in red suits. They come through conversations, through connections, through relationships. And the moment you forget that, you begin to fall for personalities over principles. There will be moments when you feel an uneasiness in your spirit around certain individuals. You can't explain it. They haven't done anything obviously wrong. They may even seem helpful, but something in your soul tightens. Your inner peace becomes unsettled. That is not something to ignore. It is often the Holy Spirit alerting you, this person is not what they appear to be. And no matter how kind their words, no matter how warm their presence, if the spirit behind them is wrong, their influence will slowly damage your destiny. God never intended for you to live based on appearances alone. He gave you a spiritual compass. He gave you the gift of discernment. But that gift must be cultivated. It must be sharpened through prayer, fasting, and time in the Word. The more time you spend in God's presence, the more easily you will detect when someone else is operating from the wrong spirit. Even if they say all the right things. Sometimes the people who slow you down are not your enemies. They are distractions sent to look like blessings. Their conversations flatter you, but their presence weakens you. They agree with you, but they also shift your focus away from the calling on your life. And over time, your energy's drained, your mind is clouded, and your spirit is heavy. And you wonder why. It's because you didn't recognize what was behind the mask. So protect your spirit, guard your peace. Every connection must be prayed over. Every opportunity must be examined, not just logically, but spiritually. Ask the question, Lord, is this from you, or is this a distraction in disguise? If it carries the wrong spirit, let it go, no matter how good it looks. Because one wrong connection can cost you more than you know. And one moment of discernment can save your future. Recognize the spirit behind the mask. It may look like a person, but in truth it's a test. Pass it. By walking in spiritual vision, not by sight. In a world that constantly tells you to speak up, clap back, and defend yourself at all costs, there is a sacred strength in doing the opposite. Choosing silence. Silence is not weakness. It is not passivity. It is power. It is the language of wisdom, the protection of peace, and the shield against unnecessary warfare. There are moments in life when the most effective thing you can do is say nothing. No explanation, no defense, no reaction, just stillness. Because when you choose silence in the face of provocation, you strip the enemy of the one thing he thrives on, your attention. When a person or situation is sent to drain you, it is never truly about the words they speak. It is about the energy they want from you. Their mission is to disturb your focus, disrupt your rhythm, and shake your confidence. They come disguised as critics, gossipers, manipulators, or even friends. Their words may be sharp, their tone may be offensive, and their timing may be calculated. But beneath all of it is an assignment to pull you into a battle that has no reward, to engage you in emotional warfare that exhausts your spirit and leaves you empty. And the moment you argue back, explain yourself, or try to convince them of your worth or innocence, you've already lost something. You've given away your peace. Your peace is not just a feeling. It is your spiritual posture. It is the place where you hear from God clearly, where you move with confidence, where you walk in divine clarity. When that peace is disturbed, your discernment is clouded, your decisions become reactive, and your soul becomes restless. And the enemy knows this. That is why he sends voices to provoke you. Not because he wants a fight, but because he wants access. And the fastest way to give access is through your own mouth. The more you speak to what was sent to destroy you, the more power you give it. But when you remain silent, you create a boundary that darkness cannot cross. Silence doesn't mean you don't care. It means you've chosen to preserve what matters more, your inner strength, your clarity, your purpose. When someone tries to draw you into a fruitless argument or accuses you of something false, silence becomes your testimony. It says, I know who I am, and I don't need to explain that to anyone. It says, I will not wrestle with what is beneath my assignment. It says, you do not deserve access to my energy. One of the most profound examples of silence used as a weapon comes from the life of Christ. As he stood before his accusers, facing false testimonies, betrayal, and injustice, he didn't shout, he didn't fight back, he didn't try to defend himself. He remained silent. Why? Because he understood that some accusations are not worth answering. Some attacks are not meant to be confronted. They're meant to be endured in silence. His silence was not defeat. It was divine strategy. It was the wisdom to know that when people are determined to misunderstand you, no amount of talking will change their minds. And when spirits are sent to provoke you, the only answer they understand is your stillness. The battles in your life could have ended sooner if you had chosen silence instead of reaction. You are not called to fight every voice. You are not called to explain every decision. You are not responsible for correcting every false narrative. Sometimes the greatest form of resistance is to keep moving forward while saying nothing. That kind of restraint is not natural. It is spiritual. It is the fruit of maturity. It is the mark of someone who understands that energy is sacred and not everyone deserves a piece of yours. Silence is also your place of power because it gives space for God to speak on your behalf. When you stop trying to control every outcome, defend every choice, or respond to every insult, you give room for divine justice to intervene. God does not operate in noise. He moves in stillness. And often he is waiting for you to be quiet so that he can be loud on your behalf. But if you're constantly speaking, defending, or arguing, you drown out his voice with your own. There's something powerful about being able to look at a situation designed to pull you out of character and simply walk away. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's not giving up. That's choosing a higher battle. Because every time you refuse to argue, you're not just protecting your peace. You're declaring that your spirit is not available for rent. You're saying, I refuse to lower myself to match the chaos around me. I will rise above. This doesn't mean you never speak up. It means you learn when your words are strategic and when they're wasteful. It means you learn that not every insult needs an answer. Not every lie needs a correction, and not every conflict deserves your time. When your silence is intentional, it becomes louder than any response you could ever give. It echoes with strength, maturity, and self-control. So the next time someone tries to bait you into an argument, pull you into drama, or draw you into their dysfunction, remember this: your silence is not weakness. It is your weapon. Use it wisely. Hold your peace. Guard your energy. Let your quietness speak volumes. Because in the silence, heaven fights for you. The most dangerous attacks you will ever face in life are not always direct. They do not always come as storms or disasters. Often they come as conversations, as questions, as subtle confrontations. These are the distractions that wear the mask of logic and urgency, and they carry with them the power to pull you away from the very path you were created to walk. These distractions are not after your emotions. They are after your purpose. That's the real target. The argument, the offense, the misunderstanding, they are just bait. And if you fall for it, you risk stepping out of alignment with what you were divinely assigned to accomplish. When someone challenges your integrity, criticizes your values, or questions your beliefs, the instinct is to defend yourself, to explain, to clarify. But you must understand this. Not every attack is about the surface issue. Sometimes it's about delaying your progress. The enemy doesn't need to destroy your life to win. He just needs to detour your focus. Because every minute you spend arguing with someone who doesn't even understand your calling is a minute you lose building the very thing you were born to do. Every word you speak in defense of yourself to someone whose heart is hardened is energy wasted on a conversation that cannot bear fruit. Purpose requires protection. And one of the greatest ways you protect your purpose is by refusing to be distracted. Distractions are not always loud. They can come through polite conversations, social obligations, or even religious discussions. But the moment they begin to pull you out of your spiritual center, they become dangerous. You have to ask yourself, is this conversation helping me grow? Is it aligned with my assignment? Or is it slowly pulling me into an argument that has nothing to do with my destiny? If it's the latter, it is not just a waste of time. It is a threat to your calling. The enemy is strategic. He studies you. He knows your weak points, your insecurities, and your triggers. And so he sends people, not always bad people, but unwise, unhealed, or unassigned individuals into your life with just the right words to provoke you. They say things that sound reasonable but are spiritually loaded with confusion. They pose questions that sound like curiosity but are really weapons of doubt. And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself spending more time justifying your actions than walking in obedience. That's the trap, to exchange your divine focus for emotional entanglement. When you're truly walking in purpose, you will be misunderstood. Not everyone will agree with your decisions. Not everyone will support your journey. And that's okay. Your calling wasn't given to a committee. It was given to you. You don't need a majority vote to obey God. You don't need universal approval to stay committed to your vision. What you need is the discipline to protect your assignment from unnecessary engagement. Because while you're explaining your vision to someone who has no spiritual insight, the enemy is busy setting more traps, planting more seeds of doubt, and stealing more of your time. Time is holy. Every day you live is a gift that cannot be reclaimed. And when you spend that gift in arguments, in offenses, or in debates that lead nowhere, you are sacrificing your divine schedule. There are people assigned to bless you, places where your gifts are needed, and moments when heaven is prepared to release miracles. But all of it can be delayed if you're not in position. And being in position means refusing to let distractions. If the enemy can't stop your purpose, he'll try to delay it. And distraction is his most subtle weapon. Purpose-driven people must develop a discipline of silence and separation. You must learn to walk away from conversations that lead to nowhere. You must recognize when a question is not an inquiry but a trap. You must sense when someone is trying to pull you out of peace just to make you react. Because once you react, you've already given away your power. You've surrendered control of your narrative to someone who doesn't even understand the depth of your calling. There is no purpose without pressure, and there is no progress without provocation. But provocation is not an invitation. Just because someone tries to engage you does not mean you owe them a response. Some things are not meant to be answered. They are meant to be ignored. And when you resist the urge to respond, you win a battle that is much bigger than the moment. You remain aligned. You stay grounded. You keep your focus. Your purpose is sacred. It is not a topic for every debate. It is not a project for every opinion. It is a calling designed by heaven, and it must be guarded. So when the voices come, and they will, remember the noise is not about you. It's about your purpose. The argument is not the enemy's goal. Your distraction is. And when you know that, you stop engaging with every voice and you start walking with intentional silence. Keep your eyes on the mission. Keep your heart in peace. Protect your purpose. Because what you're carrying is too valuable to waste on arguments designed to derail your destiny. There is a profound and often overlooked truth that must be acknowledged by anyone walking a path of purpose, faith, or spiritual growth. Warfare doesn't always look like warfare. It doesn't always come with obvious threats or visible danger. Many times it comes cloaked in comfort, disguised as friendship, and delivered through people who appear harmless. The most dangerous battles you will ever face are not the ones that come from the outside. They're the ones that arrive inside your circle. Speaking your language, knowing your story, and blending in like allies. This is the nature of disguised warfare. Not every person who enters your life is sent by God. Some are strategically planted. They come smiling, but with hidden agendas. They come speaking in tones that mimic love, concern, or support, but their real assignment is to distract, delay, or destroy. These are not always evil people. Sometimes they are broken people being used by spiritual forces beyond their awareness. Just because a person is familiar doesn't mean they are safe. Just because someone knows your habits, your past, or your dreams, doesn't mean they're qualified to walk with you into your future. Spiritual warfare is rarely loud. It often whispers in trusted tones. Many people fall not because they were attacked by a stranger, but because they trusted the wrong, familiar voice. That is why discernment is more crucial than ever in this season of your life. You cannot afford to evaluate people based solely on how they present themselves. You must see beyond the surface. You must learn to ask yourself, what spirit is operating behind this voice? What energy does this conversation carry? Does this presence bring clarity or confusion? Peace or unrest, forward motion or stagnation? Because sometimes the battle is not with the person, it's with the spirit behind them. Spiritual warfare often uses relationships as its battlefield. It doesn't need an army to invade your life. All it needs is access. And access is often granted through the people you let close. People you open up to, people you pray with, people you laugh with. And if you don't have discernment, you won't see it coming. You'll think you're dealing with a person when you're actually dealing with an influence. You'll think it's about an argument or a disagreement, when it's actually about a spirit sent to pull you off track. This is how the enemy works. He doesn't always destroy, he distracts. He doesn't always confront, he confuses. That's why you have to protect your space, protect your energy, protect your spirit. Not with paranoia, but with prayerful awareness, with spiritual sensitivity. Because the most effective attacks don't always break you. They wear you down. They come through endless conversations that drain you, through subtle suggestions that make you question your direction, through flattery that feeds your ego or criticism that crushes your confidence. And if you're not aware, you'll find yourself spiritually exhausted, emotionally confused, and mentally overwhelmed, all because you let the wrong voice too close. Even in Scripture, some of the greatest betrayals came from within. Delilah was close to Samson. Judas was close to Jesus. The enemy doesn't attack from a distance. He gets close. He studies you. He gains your trust. And once inside, he begins his work, not always by destroying, but by slowly unraveling the fabric of your faith, your focus, your identity. That's the warfare that is hardest to recognize because it comes in disguise. It speaks with the language of love but carries the spirit of sabotage. Your peace is a thermometer. Pay attention to it. When someone enters your life and confusion follows, that's not coincidence. It's a signal. When your prayer life weakens after certain conversations, that's not random. It's a clue. When your vision becomes blurry after taking advice from a certain person, that's not miscommunication, it's misalignment. God speaks through peace. The enemy traffics in confusion. And if you pay close attention to the fruit someone brings into your life, you'll know exactly what they were sent to do. But here's the power you carry. You are not defenseless. You are not without tools. You have discernment, you have authority, you have the ability to silence the wrong voices and protect your divine assignment. But you must be willing to walk away from what looks safe but feels spiritually wrong. You must be bold enough to love people without letting them access the deepest parts of you if they're not meant to go there. You must trust your spirit more than their words. You don't need to confront everyone. You don't need to expose them. Just discern, distance, and keep walking in peace. The enemy hates when you discern the disguise, because the moment you see it for what it is, it loses its power. It no longer has the ability to manipulate your emotions or distract your destiny. And that is how you win in spiritual warfare. By seeing clearly and refusing to argue with what you've already identified as darkness in disguise. Remember, your destiny is too important to waste on relationships, conversations, or connections that were only set to derail you. Not everyone deserves access. Not every voice deserves your response. Not every smiling face is a sign from heaven. Sometimes it's a trap. And when you understand that, you stop giving the enemy your time, your energy, or your attention. You stay grounded. You stay focused. You stay free. Spiritual warfare is real, and more often than not, it comes wearing a familiar face. Be wise, be vigilant, and above all, be still enough to hear what your spirit is telling you, because it will never lie. Not every battle requires a fight. Some are won simply by recognizing the enemy and walking away. You are not weak for walking away. You are wise. You are not passive for being quiet. You are powerful, because the enemy isn't after your opinion. He's after your attention. So today, choose to disconnect from the distraction. Leave the argument behind and walk in the authority of one who knows. I don't need to fight demons in disguise. I just need to stay in the light